everybody, it's Joel from the Board Game Mechanics. Today I'm taking a look at Feudum. It's a game that I'm going to go ahead and say right now, I love this game. I'm going to talk about why I love it later. And I'm going to talk about why I think it needs another chance from some of the reviewers out there who are saying certain things about this game that I don't think holds up. I just don't think it's valid. And I'll tell you why. But first, if you don't know much about Feudum, or if you want to know a little more about it, we're going to go ahead and just take a look around the board and some of the components now. And a word of warning on this, if you're coming here for a rules explanation or something like that, this probably isn't the video you want. Although please watch, subscribe, like. But this is going to be a video that you're not going to learn how to play the game from. You're going to have to look up some of Oddbird's videos that they have, and they're really great videos, well done. And even then, you watch that full video that's 30 minutes long, and hopefully this review is not even that long. You watch that full 30-minute interview or tutorial video and kind of rules explanation video, and then you feel like you're probably ready to dig into the rules because there's just a lot in this game. So anyway, here's just a little dabbling, a little splash of what's in this game for me. So this is Feudum. This is the board, and the board is just really big. To give you kind of a sense of the scope of the board, this is a standard playing card. So there it is. This board's just very long. It's very long. It's not really wide, but the way how it's laid out makes a lot of sense once you kind of understand the gameplay. So again, I'm not going to try and teach you guys how to play this game. That's not this video. There's a really excellent video put up by... The channel's called Feudum, and I'm pretty sure Oddbird Games put up the video to try and explain how to play the game Feudum. And it's, you know, it's 28 minutes long, and it's narrated by a really pleasant to hear English guy. So it's a real fun video to watch. It makes you really feel like you're watching a Monty Python animation. And the animation style on this really does remind me of Monty Python. But I do want you guys, I'm guessing if you've come to this video, you want to hear another opinion on Feudum. You've probably seen some stuff about it, because if you're somebody who's looking at Feudum videos, you know what you're talking about. You know about the game a little bit, probably. If you don't, though, and you're just a fan of the board game mechanics, awesome. Thanks for watching. I'm just going to give you guys a real quick sense of this game. So right off the bat, this board is huge, and it has really two major areas on it. The first one is the map with the terrains. And so the story of this game is that you've basically been put out of your kingdom, and you're really trying to reestablish your family name. And so there's all of these different terrain areas that you can figure out. So the board's really beautiful. I will say it's not the most practical board I've ever played, because like some things like this looks like just graphic design here. Well, that's actually a practical functioning part of the map. And these little birds here, these little birds on the path, that's actually a functioning part of the design. So everything, all these design elements being incorporated into the board, it's really cool, but it also makes it somewhat take a little extra brain energy or a little power to try and figure out, you know, what zones what, or if you can travel certain ways or not. So, for example, these like little waves here. See those little waves on this river? Those waves in that river indicate that certain things can travel on them. These bubbles on this with those waves indicate certain things can happen there that can't happen where there's just waves. So all these little symbols in there are important, even though it's just a beautiful looking board. There's just tons of just stuff that happens in there that you have to figure out the hidden in picture symbols. And so I know for a lot of really just heavy duty Euro gamers, this is really unattractive to you guys as someone who wants to look at a board and have it be definitely function over form. This one takes the form over function approach a little bit, but you know what? I don't mind it. And I'll tell you why in a little bit in my final thoughts. These different symbols here just show the different kinds of terrain there are. And I'm going to roll there's a die that is going to basically be rolled. That's a terrain die, type of terrain die. And then we would flip one of these over, and then the indicated effect would happen. So I'm not going to even get into the indicated effects or what these symbols all mean. But that's why that's there. And that helps to progress the game too. So the game does progress through 5 phases, which is kind of laid out here. So these red tiles, that red color matches the red up here. So when there's 6 number 1 red tiles showing, we're still in phase 1. Then when 4 phase 2 are showing, then we go to phase 2. Then when 3 of these are showing, 2, and then 1. It just kind of shows how the game progresses pretty quick, and the scoring does accelerate towards the end of the game. This game I expected to be really long when I was playing it, it ended up being not as long as you might think, especially with 2 players. I think I've gotten through this game in well under 2 hours. Well, not well, but under 2 hours. So let's go to the next part of the board. I've looked at the map part, and these are all the little, like, they aren't feudums yet, but they're little plots of lands that you can influence to try and produce goods or try and, gain influence in the other guilds. So the guilds are the other part that we're going to talk about. And I'm not going to go through what every specific guild does, but we'll just get a real general sense of them. We've got like the farm guild over here, and if you can see, there's a cube coming out of that barn. Cubes are representing goods in this game, so that's where the goods are produced, and it allows you to produce the goods and get the goods. And then the goods go for sale over here with the merchant. So this guy's the merchant here, and all those symbols on there mean things for how much you have to pay to buy the goods and things like that. And then next to that is the alchemist guild, which the alchemists are kind of the inventors, and they kind of come up with some interesting things that help you travel, and they do things with goods as well. And then you come clear over to the other side of the board, and there's the Knights Guild. The Knights Guilds let you develop more influence in your kingdom. Then we have this guild here, which is the guild. I think this is the Queen's, whatever the Queen's Guild is. But she allows you to gain like the king's favors, but also allows you to be an attacking person and being aggressive and trying to take out more territory. This is the Monks Guild, and the Monks Guild, it's kind of neat because it has these beads. So again, like how things are going to incorporate into the art on the game. Let's take a look at these little favor tokens. They just blend right in, and they're just going to sit there, and they actually are functional. There's that many tokens there, and then there's also beads that match these beads too, that have numbers on them, and they can be used a couple different ways as well. So there's these guilds. The neat thing about these guilds is if you look here at the top of the Farmers Guild, let's just look at the top of the Farmers Guild. There's an arrow going up. Then there's like the main area here, and then there's an arrow pointing to the next guild. So this is what's at the heart of this game. This is what's unique to this game as much as anything, is it has this neat push-pull and like main guild function. And depending on your influence in the guilds and how you can function within the guilds, you can do a push or a pull action. That's going to like allow you to, if you did a push guild, we're going to follow the arrow and push. And we're going to push goods from here into here and influence the guild next to us, okay? Or if you were going to do a pull, you would pull from here, from the Monks Guild, towards the farm and do some stuff to make sure your crops are blessed and stuff like that. The Alchemist Guild also can push goods from inside the store into the Alchemist Guild, so they have materials to do their alchemy, and then it can push all the way from here, clear in a complete cycle. It's a circle basically of these guilds, and they all influence and work together. So that kind of economy of guilds is really neat. How they, in order to get your guild to fire, you need the guild next to yours to fire sometime. And for that guild to fire, you need the guild next to it to fire. So you need to kind of sometimes really do a lot of future planning that you're going to try and get, those 3 guilds to work together maybe. But you need to think about how that's going to look for you over the course of, maybe 4 or 5 turns. Okay? So let's get into the actual player components now too. So every player has got their little thing here. That's just basically the haversack looking thing that you can put some goods on. And if you put certain goods on top of that before your turn starts, you can either get an additional card in your hand or you can take successive turns. There's reasons in this game why you'd want to do both those things. You also get these. These look like die. So I think when we all look at this game initially, we think these are 3 die that we're going to be rolling all the time in the game. And oh man, I can manipulate these dies and use these die and use them. Well, they're not die, and that's a little disappointing maybe to people who love dice. But man, look at that nasty scratch on there. I need a table topper or something to cover that up. Anyway, these die, they are die, the shape of them, but they're actually pawns, and they represent different things. They represent different occupations that you're basically your family member or minion or whatever you want to call them could possibly have to influence. So that one would be influencing that particular region with that particular character power. So they all kind of match up with different guilds, and so when you hit certain influence levels by having these guys out there, you end up taking these, which are the next component I want to talk about, these influence tokens, and you put them into you take them and you put them into the different guilds. So you become the guild master if you have the most influence in that particular guild, and you get a set of powers that are different than people who are followers of you in the guild. So all this stuff's happening with these guilds in this world, But like really, it comes down to some pretty simple mechanics that all just trigger based on a lot of different things. So I'm going to go ahead and just look at this. This is at the heart of the game are these actions that you can take. So every round, you're going to pick cards out of this deck of cards, and we're just look at all these. This is a defend action. That's probably one of the worst ones that I could look at first, but I didn't stage these cards very well. That just basically gives you more defense when you're being attacked. Then also there's always a little thing in the corner here that shows that if you're able to, because you have certain conditions in the game, you're able to get a different additional power kind of thing going on. Migrate, this is just basically saying you pay 1 food and you can move a pawn. This is exploring, which allows you to establish new settlements. Harvest, which allows you to take your farms and earn and gather food from them. That's a conquer action, which allows you to attack other players. But I'm going to say right now, attacking is definitely something that can happen. But in my experience, in lower player counts in particular, the attacking just doesn't happen that much because you're working so hard at trying to improve other aspects of your influence. The next thing is this this influence, which allows you to, when you have a pawn near a area, you can influence it using one of your influence tokens that you have available to you. But you very much have a limited supply of influence tokens available to you, and that's what the Knight's Guild does. It allows you to gather more influence. This is a move action. This is a guild action, so this allows you to perform the function of a neighboring guild in certain conditions. Which is really important sometimes because you sometimes are going to have to push and pull from neighboring guilds to get more goods into yours and things like that. A tax action, which allows you to collect shekels based on your influence in different communities. This is a repeat, which is it allows you to do a card a second time. And then an improve action, which allows you to basically take a feature that you have already and make it into something more developed. So you can develop, into farms and different things like that. So those are the actions you have choices of. You aren't going to play them all every round. You're going to pre-program, kind of like any programming game. You're going to pick a few of these cards, make a hand of cards for yourself, and then you're going to play these cards in the order that you have the hand of cards for yourself in. And so you have to do some planning on what actions you think you're going to need, but then the players are going to play cards out, and you may have to modify. If you wanted to move somewhere and someone else moved there first, you may want to wait and think about, oh man, I'll wait till they move out, then I can go there, or something like that. So the action choices are made earlier, but then the order of the actions can be kind of modified on your turn a little bit. That's not even a quarter of what the game's about, not even a quarter of the rules. I'm going to tell you that 28-minute rules explanation is enough to give you a good solid introduction that you can go into the rule book and really read what happens in this game. But now I'm going to try and explain kind of in some more depth why this game is awesome and why I feel like, oh man, I just spoiled it, didn't I? I'm going to explain why this game's awesome, and I'm going to explain why probably some of the reviews out there aren't completely accurate or a little biased towards one thing or another. Okay, so that's just like seriously, a splash is a good word for it. Like, I feel like I just gave you a little tiny touch of what's in this game, some of the cooler concepts in it. So right off the bat, I'm going to get right to it. I'm going to say what other reviewers are saying and why I don't think it holds up. And then I'm going to talk about some of the great stuff that I don't think gets enough emphasis. Okay. First things first, people call this game fiddly. They say it's super fiddly and you have to do a lot of calculations and you have to always be doing math and figuring out who's in the leads here and there. And you're always going to miss some stuff and people are going to lose points because you just miss calculations and majorities and blah, blah, blah. Well, there's definitely area control parts of this game. And in every area control game, you have to see who's controlling the areas with whatever rule set you're using. So this game's no different than that. You have to be aware of who's controlling majorities. And then there's other implications. You don't just score points based on controlling things. You get other powers and you get other things that you can do in the game based on those majorities. So it's maybe a little more critical that you're on top of those things, but it's not undoable. It's not impossible. Maybe that's a better word, impossible, to keep on top of these things. Now, if you played this game one time and then you did a review of it, which I feel like is probably happening a lot, I don't blame you. It's a 4-hour game, 3-hour game, 2+ hour game, depending on how many players. If it's not your thing, if you don't enjoy this kind of super heavy game, which it is super heavy, don't have any doubts about that, then playing this game 3 or 4 or 5 times to really get a good sense of it, to give a review, probably isn't going to happen. You're not going to play a game for 20 hours to do a review. If you're a very busy reviewer who's maybe not got keen taste for this kind of thing, I get that. I don't fault you. I'm not sure that I would play a game that I hated for 20 hours to give a good review of it. But given that I have played this game for approaching 20 hours or played around with this game for approaching 20 hours, I do want to say that there's some things that are being missed, that people are getting wrong after just one play. And that fiddliness is one of them. Because like anything else, as you get into routines and you develop second nature for how this game works, that fiddliness goes down quite a bit. Like, you don't have to think as hard about, do I have a majority still in this guild or not? Or is this person's action changing majorities in different guilds? It's kind of a second nature thing. Putting out cubes, placing cubes into the markets and things like that. It's no different, no more difficult, certainly no more difficult than other popular games that are a little fiddly, but they're still great games in spite of that. Like Eclipse is one that I'm going to think of right off the bat. That there's a lot of stuff on that board that you have to fiddle with, but it's still a great game and it's still worth playing, but there is some fiddliness. This game is the same way. There's a lot of stuff to it. You're going to have a lot of components in there that are going to have to be messed with and changed and manipulated. It's a part of the game. Okay. So if you don't want a game that's fiddly, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have a game that's super heavy and has tons of stuff involved in it. But then in the meantime, be mad when it does have tons of stuff and you have to do a lot of manipulating of components. So that's my thing on the fiddliness. I think it's not void. There's definitely fiddliness to this game. However, it's a part of the game. It's a part of, what you're getting in the whole package here. The next thing I want to mention about this game is that people say that the design on it, the design choices on it are a deal breaker. That because the beautiful design is trying to be artistic and beautiful and doesn't totally come as a form first kind of thing, that alone will break, my will to play this game, or it makes the game that should take 40 minutes last 4 hours or something. I mean, it's kind of the impression that people give you when they talk about the design on this board. Well, the board does definitely have a beauty over function kind of thing going on here. It definitely is function second. No doubt about it. But here's the thing. I love this board. I think it looks amazing. And again, on repeated plays, it becomes secondhand nature to you that you understand, second nature, that it may be secondhand nature, I guess. It becomes second nature to you that the graphic design elements are a part of the function of the board. And that these things are embedded into the artwork. It's something that it becomes a part of what you do in the game on repeated plays. Again, first play, you're probably going to get really frustrated and annoyed that, oh man, these little bubbly things, what's that mean? Oh, let's go to the rulebook and check it out. Well, on repeated plays, you understand what that means. And you understand what's going on with all that stuff. So the graphic design choices, I get it. I get why it's frustrating to some people. But on repeated plays, it becomes less of a big deal. So that's the other reviewers are saying about it primarily. It's too long, etc. Well, if you are somebody who... Let's take this review to something else other than board games, okay? So let's say you are someone who reviews consumer electronics. Let's say that you are somebody who is way into iPhones and you're way into cameras and things like that. And then all of a sudden someone asks you to analyze a chipset for a nuclear submarine. I'm not saying that I would want to do that or I would enjoy doing that or that it's a more noble or better thing than knowing a ton about consumer electronics. It's just a very different thing, okay? So for you to go look at this chipset and user interface on a submarine and say, man, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me and I don't enjoy it, I get that. For a reviewer who's reviewing mostly family weight games and general market of the hobbyist games, I get why you're going to say this game isn't for you. This game looks like, however, it is so beautiful and it's been put into so many stores and so many places that it looks like it's a game that would be a consumer electronics type game. It looks like it would be one of those, not quite mass market, but one of those secondary hobbyist market, big selling, major mainstream type game. It's not. I mean, this game is not for everybody. But if you know that you love heavy games, it is for you. 100% absolutely it's for you. So if you're somebody who loves to tinker with the user interface on a military grade circuit board, user interface on a circuit board doesn't make a lot of sense. But anyway, I think my analogy holds up that if you're used to doing something that's much lighter and then you move to this, you're not going to enjoy it as much as somebody who's, man, give me the meat, give me the heaviness. So this game, a lot of reviewers that do reviews that are popular don't review these kinds of games very often. And it's because they've got to do a ton of reviews. They've got to review games that are wide appeal to people. And I get all those things too. I'm not saying those people are bad. I'm not saying that they're wrong all the time. I'm saying that on this particular game, you can't play this when a typical reviewer is going to play a game for maybe 5-6 hours, then do their review on it. Okay. On anything that's new, because you just can't. You can't play a game for 50 hours, then put a review out and have it be timely. By that time, the game has been out for a year, you know? So it's a rush to get the reviews out kind of thing that happens. So a lot of these reviews, I'm positive they happen after one play. And after one play, the fiddliness is definitely there. The graphic design choices are really harmful for one play. Okay? Now let's get into who this game I think was really intended for. I think this game was really intended to be played 4 or 5 times a year with the same group of guys that you love them like brothers, and they're a part of your core game group, and you are in each other's lives beyond playing games, you know, like one of those kind of family board game playing groups, you know what I mean? And you're messaging each other about stuff that's not board games, and you just are like really just good friends, you know what I mean? And you play games with these guys repeatedly, and you get to know their idiosyncrasies as they play games, and you know that you're going to play games with them for years to come. That's the group that this game will do well with, that likes heavy games, because you're going to remember the rules. You may have to do a little refresher, but it'll be less and less and less on repeated plays. But you're going to learn how each other plays. You're going to learn more competitive strategies. You're going to learn how to play this game well over time. And you can't play this game well after one play. And the other thing too is this game, with the way how the guilds push and pull, the way how the guilds all interact with each other, if you've got somebody who's not good at this game and they don't know how to push or pull using their guild's powers to do things for them, then they are going to make it harder for you. So having good competition in this game and people who understand this game play with you, it's like tennis. You need somebody who's the same ability as you to really get something back out of it. Feudum's the same way. You need players that know how to play the game, know how to play heavier games, and then you get a lot more out of the game. You really enjoy it more. You have more meaningful decisions, and the mechanisms in the game balance and work together. So I feel like, honestly, this is something that you can't hardly review in these next few years. I mean, like, I would say that I definitely, when I sit down to play this game, do I feel like at times it's fiddly? Absolutely. At times do I feel frustrated by the graphic design choices? Absolutely. Even still to this day, the price of the goods in the market being underneath the goods doesn't make any sense from a graphic design standpoint at all. But every time I play it, it gets less and less and less. And I know that based on that, in the future, it will be even less. And then beyond that, my enjoyment of this game has gotten better every time. So you know how a lot of times you play that game the first time, you're learning the rules, it's all exciting and new, the box still like has that new game smell, and then you play it again and it's like, oh yeah, this is a good game. Third time you're like, yeah, I really do like this game. And even if it's a great game, it stays in that solid sense, but that novelty thing wears off. And it's a solid selection, but you still kind of want to, you know, play that new game or something sometimes. Or maybe not everybody's that way, I get that, but I'm that way. This game for me has had the opposite effect. The first time I played it, I was like, man, I kind of am bummed that I invested this kind of money in buying this game. But I don't know, we'll try it again. Play 2, it was like, oh man, so much more of this game opened up. So much more of this I understood. And my enjoyment of this game was so much richer the second time. Third time, even more. Fourth time, even more. Fifth time, you know? And so I feel like for me to give a real true review of this game, it's going to come in like 2021. After I play this game for a while, and I can really just tell you about all the stuff that's going on in it. I feel like this game's more closely related to like something like Twilight Struggle, where people play that game almost as their sport. It's a thing that they're going to constantly be going back to, trying to hone their skills on. This is one of those games like that. You won't play it casually. If you own it, you're going to want to make an event out of it a few times a year and say, hey, we're doing Feudum. And people are going to either go, oh, awesome, that's great. Or they're going to go, that's not me. And so if you're one of those that's not me people, fine. I don't judge you. I don't think you're a bad person for not liking the game I like. But I would also at the same time say, if it is you, if you love heavy games and you love games that you can improve at and feel like you're doing better at, and you love learning how to play games against the same group of people in different ways and more interesting ways, this game is for you. And that player interaction between the pull and the push of the guilds, nothing like that exists in any game that I've played. It's just such a unique mechanic, and the way how it's using area control as another mechanic or to trigger another mechanics, and then the action selection on the cards, like all these things, the way how these mechanics that we've seen other places mostly, but the way how they're used not as the core mechanic, but as a part of the tapestry of a bigger thing, it's just so cool. I absolutely love this game. This game not only is my favorite game of 2018, but it has huge potential to be my favorite game of 2019, 20, 21, 22, as far as games that I've been playing those years, because it gets better as I play it. Every play has been better than the one previous. That's it. I don't have the expansions yet. And I still feel like this game, I'm not playing the whole game yet. I've never explored some of the guilds on there. Like some of the 6 guilds, I've never really tried to use them to win the game. I find that usually you're going to play really heavily in a couple guilds, and then other people are going to be kind of cornered up in their guilds. And I mean, like seriously, there's so much to this game. It's just really hard to explain the game in a video like this, but then also to give a really fair impression of it after one play. There's just too much game there. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about a few other things in this game real quick that I think are worth talking about. So the first one is this. Again, the art, the graphic design. To me, this is super cool. This is like 70s alternative British comedy a la Monty Python, or maybe even like American, like National Lampoon type style art that's just really cool and really fun. Just the characters, the look of the characters, and just everything is just silly, fun, awesomeness. And so just the paradoxical nature of this ultra heavy game, having this whimsical, beautiful, cool art in it, it makes some people's brains break. And that's why they say, it needs to have grids and hexes, and it needs to have clearly marked and clearly easily distinguishable color patterns to show which terrain is which terrain and the routes and blah, blah, blah. I mean, like, honestly, I get that. If you are absolutely 100%, like, I would play an awesome game mechanic on the back of a cereal box if it was the right thing. Then I get why you're complaining about that a little bit. But honestly, like I said, you get better at understanding this board on repeated plays. And it's so stinking beautiful. Like, I seriously love the look of this game. The components in this game are top notch. Just the finish on everything is great. It's just everything in this game is really nice and really well produced. And I think for us to complain and say it's produced too well and it should be been produced in a more functional way instead of a beautiful, cool looking way is kind of silly. I mean, to me at least. I get it. I do get it. I don't agree with it. So, and you don't have to agree with me. You can say, you know what? What's the point of playing a game if you have to think about stuff on the board and the design of it gets in the way? I understand that too. But I don't think it's as big of a deal as people make it out to be, especially on repeated plays. These dudes are in every promotional shot for this game ever. Like, always there. And I'm going to tell you, like, on some of my plays, they didn't even get in the game because there's so much game there and there's so many things you're working on that those guys don't make sense to get because they do kind of cost to get them out there. And then their powers they do are pretty awesome. It's like having another pawn that you don't have to feed or can travel really in a really cool way. But I don't think they're critical. I don't think that you absolutely have to utilize them, and they're not like a core component of the game. So they're cool that they're in there and they're something you can utilize, but it's interesting that honestly, those guys don't get a whole lot of use, but darn, they're cool, aren't they? So that's the thing that really reminds me of like the Monty Python stuff is that little guy there. And like, honestly, Oddbird, you should make stickers with that guy on it or t-shirts. I would definitely wear one. And other people who like the other 6 people out there who are like willing to give Feudum a chance enough to really understand it's awesome would probably go, oh man, you're a Feudum guy, and we'd high five. So anyway, that's the other thing that I wanted to mention. Final thing is this is the box size on it. It's a good size box. The box is roughly the same size as, I don't know, Eclipse, a little bigger than Eclipse maybe. It's just a 1.5 of the size of Days of Wonder box kind of thing. Standard Days of Wonder kind of size box thing. It's just a good size box. So if you're going to look at this game and shelf space is a concern, it is a little bit big of a box, but there's a lot in there. I mean, like it's hard to fit all this game in a box that's smaller, especially if you want to try and start throwing some expansions in there. So it is a good size box. But At any rate, if this game isn't for you, I don't fault you. I get it. I hope you are self-actualized enough to be like, yeah, this game's not for me, or this game is for me, and it seems like it's something great. But regardless, I think this is one of those things that you just kind of have to, I don't know, make a decision for yourself. And I would encourage you not to listen to any reviewers, including me, until you've really like torn into the gameplay and maybe played this game yourself. I always record my reviews right after I eat dinner. So like I've always got like a half a belch working its way up when I'm talking. So anyway, if you made it to this minute of the review, you get to know that part about me. If you enjoyed this video at all whatsoever, please subscribe. Please just subscribe and watch our other stuff. I'm only half the team here, maybe a third of the team here. Jason, my co-host on the podcast, which is really my favorite part of what we do is board game mechanics, does a bunch of videos on here as well. So we're another voice to hear. I am now deliberately trying to avoid a lot of the reviewers out there because I feel like groupthing's a thing that happens. A lot of people just start really focusing on, man, I love this game, and then it snowballs. If you look at my shelf here, this is actually my shelf that I'm using for my background. Empires of the Void 2 is a top center spot because I love that game, but I haven't heard a whole lot of other people love it. But it's a great game. I love it. I should do a review of it. At any rate, thanks for watching, and I guess for subscribing and liking, because we're the punk rock boys of board game reviews. And if you like to hear zany, crazy stuff, we get really goofy on the podcast sometimes. So we are the alternative comedy-ish version of board game podcasts. So anyway, thanks for watching this and listening to me ramble in circles and circles and circles. I guess really it boils down to think for yourself. There are other people who do love this game. And this game is absolutely 100% board game mechanics accepted. And I am nearly positive. I would bet my copy of, what's on that shelf back there that I would bet? I'd bet my copy of Simmer that this game's going to be in the Hall of Fame inside of 5 years because it's just good. All right. Thanks for watching, and really enjoy that you guys interact with us. Find us on Facebook. Love that too. All right. Talk to you later. Bye.